Alright, let's test our sound, make sure everything's working. I think we're good today. That works. Let's see, we got music, we got chatty going. Let's see what we're going to work on today. So I'm starting on API endpoints and really just looking to see if anyone wants to show up and chat and talk about anything else while I go through this ever so exciting process of updating all these dependencies, and eventually I'll be done with that and we can do some real work. But this part's just annoying. Oh, I should change my topic, shouldn't I? I always forget that. Where's that? Stream Manager. Yeah, thanks OBS. Let's go here. Go find my Stream Manager. Creator dashboard, I guess it's called now. And edit. What are we doing? Updating open source NuGet packages. And gotta give us some tags. I should just stop and restart my stream, shouldn't I? Software development. Done. Alright. Hey Shady, how's it going? That reminds me, I wanted to ask you a question. Let me send you something real quick on Discord. Keep that out of the stream. So today, let's see, Chatty, did you get my update? We're not doing string calculator kata like it said. We're actually updating some NuGet packages. And for now, I'm just trying to get all these updates done. And if somebody knows how to do all these updates at once, or how to tell stupid Dependabot to do them all at once, that would be awesome. There it goes. H3 Tech, lunch break, milking value from a Friday. I'm really bored by doing this, so I figure I may as well talk to people while I do it. Because this is just annoying. I don't know. I like Dependabot, I like that it's there, but this is just like not bringing me joy as an open source author. And I could just ignore it, but then I get these issues that pile up, and great. I don't want to start over. So annoying. But yeah, you know, I like that the things get updated. I like that I don't have to do it. I just have to click these buttons. But I would like it better if I didn't have to click quite so many buttons. And once you get started down this path, like Dependabot will only do like 10 open pull requests at a time. So as you start doing them, you're like, oh, I'm almost done. And then it'll fire off a bunch more. And you get squashed down with more of them. So, yeah, that's the fun of open source. For me, at least. John Aldrin, how's it going? No response. So I'm putting a lot of thought into these pull requests, as you can tell, making sure that they fit into my code perfectly. But they're all just like less than minor releases on Microsoft packages, so you know, I don't really need to think too hard about these, especially not for this testing library. So maybe this one won't be too bad. Maybe they're not going to shoot me with a bunch more new ones. Doing great. Alright, thanks. Glad to hear you are doing great. H3 Tech, yeah. Alright, this one I've been letting sit here for a while. It's like April. Do I want to do this? And I asked some questions here, and they said blah blah blah. Automatic expanding versioning step checks if there's a certain prefix. If there's no prefix label in the commit message, it doesn't create a new tag. Yeah, see, I don't know what I need to really read this and understand it, which I don't usually do too well when I'm streaming because I'm distracted. But what if it shouldn't be deployed? Currently, a CD job is a step called filter changes. Yeah, I need to look at this again some other time. It's just going to hang out there. Let's see if there's any issues here we can do something about real quick. I do want to look at this file download endpoint thing at some point. Maybe we'll play with that some today. That might be useful. Yeah, there's a few issues here we could look at, but there's another repo I need to fix up first, and that is the clean architecture one. So let's go find that, which should be right here. And it has more Dependabot things, all the same, right? They're all updates to 506. So we'll do that. Anybody have any jokes to tell? Problems I just solved? Fun technology they're looking at? Questions I can help with? I can totally multitask reading your chat while I click these buttons. I need an intern or somebody I can have click these buttons for me. This conflict's going to go away in a minute. If I try and fix it, it's going to tell me that it already fixed it. Let's try a different one. Nobody's got anything for me. No jokes? Do you guys follow one of the joke Twitter accounts? So you can follow like dad jokes here. Why'd the mime get kicked out of school? He was always acting out. How much does Santa pay to park his sleigh? It's on the house. See, good stuff there. Curious about my view of changes between .NET 5 and 6. Oh, that's something we could talk about. I just closed my window. I didn't want to do that. There's some really good performance things coming with .NET 6 that I'm looking forward to. There's better hot reload support that's coming along. Any framework I think is getting way faster. I haven't personally played with the previews too much. I mostly just have been watching the presentations and reading the blog posts, so I don't have a lot of direct experience with it yet, mostly because I spent the last several months working on Pluralsight courses that just shipped, so that's also why these things are all outstanding, is because I've been busy with other stuff. But my last C# Generics course, the most recent course I just did, should ship today, should publish today. So I don't think it's there yet, but usually they do it at night. So it would be here, and it's not yet. So probably tonight there'll be a C# Generics course that I just finished that'll be up here. So there's that. Do you think it'll trigger much refactoring from 5 or 3.1? There's not that much that's breaking. Going from 3.1 to 5 is pretty painless. From 5 to 6 should be even less so. Like each new iteration is like less and less pain. Going from .NET to .NET Core, big change. Going from Core 1 to 2 to 2.1, 2.2 to 3, like every one of those is a rougher transition. The further back you go, the harder they are, right? And as you get closer to higher numbers, right, they get easier. Like going from 3.1 to 5 is like almost trivial, like almost nothing breaks. So there's really not a lot of reason to stay on 3.1 and not go to 5. And I expect going from 5 to 6 is going to be similar. Now, some of the new stuff that they're talking about a lot, at least on Twitter, is like, being able to have smaller startup, or not have to have a class for your startup, or having endpoints for functions that are just, or having API endpoints that are just functions, like as middleware, basically. That doesn't really excite me that much. Like, I think for real applications, that's probably not the way we're going to write most real apps. I'm certainly not going to be rewriting my apps to use that pattern. So, kind of getting hung up with Azure Functions and F# in 3.1. I don't use F# very much. And I also, for that matter, haven't used Azure Functions that much. So, what are some of your hangups, H3 Tech? What are you? What's bugging you? What's causing you pain? I'm almost done with this. We'll be able to do something real. Sure. Let's update the branch. Azure Functions and F# in 3.1. What's good? What's bad? What do you hate? What do you love? This chat application should tell me if someone's typing or not, so I know if I should be watching and waiting for the response to come through. It's a long GitHub thread. Okay, I have not seen that. Alright, so then this is that same thing if I want to change up my pipeline and how it works. And I'm just not sure I'm ready to do that, so I'm gonna punt on that one as well. What issues do we have on clean architecture? Alright, well, there's that one. Alright. SQLite, no such table. If I start a new project from the template, build and run via buttons. Main page loads fine. Click on any of the project links for MVC or pages and errors thread. Okay. If you remove the file, I've seen it recreate and see the dates correct on the next round. Okay. Well, maybe that fixed it. I'll ask them if that fixed it. F did and I was going to add instructions. So how did it, okay, did I do that? I might have done that. That was in April. Get a star, versions, learn more, get started, install the template, do that, yada yada. Using that, okay. Using that, and no, I don't have any instructions. I also don't have a table of contents, which was another thing that was going to be on my list. Those folks are moving to containers AKS until .NET function goes GA. Let's see. I thought I had a table of contents thing on here. I guess it's a feature request. Add table of contents to readme file. Somebody else could do this if they wanted. There, that's good. Now let's come over here. This one, do we have a table of contents here? We do. So that one's all good. Alright, nice. So the thing about moving to containers or AKS versus functions or Lambda is that it's much more portable, right? Whether you're building on Lambda or building on Azure Functions, you're tied to that platform. Whereas if you do just build stuff in a container, you can run it locally, easily, even without having to have the SDK installed or anything else. .NET 6 in functions. Twitch chat is blocking you. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't think I have any crazy censorship going on. Unless you're badly misspelling functions. But yeah, I think it's definitely less vendor locked in to do container-based stuff. You've got to be more responsible for like deploying those containers. But if Azure starts being expensive, you can always, just deploy it to somewhere else. Need to move Chatty up. What do you mean by that? Chatty's in. You guys can't even see Chatty, can you? Twitch TV Ardalis. Move Chatty up. I don't know what you're talking about, Evan. Blocking the bottom line of the word wrap. Let's see. I think I see what you see. It's blocking. I can see the bottom line. Alright, look, here's my stream. It's going to look like it's going off into the distance here in a second. But the video feed of you. I see the bottom line. That's your last text right there. And there's me. Hi. Right? So what are you saying I need to change? Final irony is I'm running Azure functions and dev containers and it works great. Yeah, exactly. So just use containers. Containers are better because they're not locked into a vendor. There's just a learning curve of using them. Alright, so I can... Oh, there is... I see what you're saying. Alright. So if we bring up OBS, like here, I see that this goes down, overlaps. Alright, so let's see if I can fix that. Let's get this out of here. Doink. But it still looks like it shows me the bottom line every time, so I'm surprised if you're not seeing it. But I aim to please. Let's see if I do that. That's horrible. Long wrapping text doesn't show. I gotcha. I gotcha. Oh, you know what I can do? Let's make it the same size, but we'll just drop it a little bit. There. Now some of it's actually off the screen, but you're just cutting off the bottom of my shirt or whatever, which is no big deal. So that's probably better. Good. I like to use these moments to just update my OBS stuff. And I just updated OBS and it broke everything and like switched which screen was shared, and I had to fix all that. So it doesn't surprise me if some things are not quite right. Alright. So thank you for that, Evan. Hopefully that's good now. In terms of stuff to fix here, this doesn't look very interesting, so we're going to ignore that. There are some things on API endpoints that I want to try and fix. There's a bunch of issues here. So one of them was how to do better routing conventions, which we can't do with the Fluent Generics thing that I'm using. And the Fluent Generics thing is really cool. So if you haven't seen that, I can show that to you real quick. Let me just get it open in Visual Studio. I don't have a fix for the problem that they're talking about, but maybe one of you will have an idea. My best idea is to use some separate constants to build the default route, but that's a workaround, not really a solution to what they're talking about. Alright, so let me make sure I'm on the main branch, and I've got latest. I'm not in the Pluralsight repo, I'm in the API endpoints repo. Get latest. Infinite mirror effect is really nice. Yeah. Alright. Repository update. Alright, so that's good. So good. Let's close all the things. Close all but this. And then let me show you the Fluent Generics that I'm talking about. So in one of these endpoints, that's a test. I don't want to test. In the sample, in the app, in the actual endpoint, there, not the test. Get rid of that. Alright, so in the create one here, notice what type of generic this is, right? So this is a create endpoint that inherits from base async endpoint dot with request dot with response, right? So it has two different generics. One is the request generic type and one is the response generic type, and those correspond to this method here, this handle async method that is coming in on this generic base type. And so what Fluent Generics lets you do is combine or mix and match these two request and response types so that you can have a different command and a different result. And more importantly, you can have ones that don't have that generic type. So I can say with a request, but without a response. Or I could say, like on a list, potentially this one has a response and it takes a request. But I could create a list that doesn't take a request and only has a response, right? And that's the thing you can't do with a singly generic class, is if it has, like if this were something like, you know, t request comma t response, then that would be fine, right? I could do that, and I could have t request, and that would be fine. But if I then also wanted to have t response, that would break, right? Because this thing would already have existed with t request, and so it'd be the same signature twice. And so Fluent Generics gets around that. And the way it does that, and I didn't invent this, it was brought to me by the community, and there's a nice article on it, but they do it with a static class that you start the inheritance chain from. So I'm inheriting from base endpoint, or if you prefer, base async endpoint. And then within this, there's static classes inside where there's basically two trees, right? There's one that has with request and one that has without request. So you pick one of those first, and then within that, there's two options too. So if you have a request, then you either also have a response or not. And if you don't have a request, then you have a response or not. And by doing that, you end up with the appropriate signature here, where this one has just the response, this one has no generics at all, where up here you've got both, right? Here's the response, here's the request. So that's pretty cool. But the bug, the issue that it's talking about here, if we look at this, is you can't have a shared routing convention with the new Fluent Generics API. So what does that mean? What would a shared routing convention be? Well, if I came to my base async endpoint right here, and I wanted to say, hey, all these things have a route of, API slash controller slash action or whatever, I can't do that anymore. So because this is in the package, right? This is in the NuGet package. There's nowhere for you to put this attribute now that lets you do it, and you can't put it on any of these things. Like I can add a route to this one, right? That's fine. I can say route, whatever here, and it'll work if I could type the right characters. But it doesn't really do anything because I've already got this right here, right? There's only one endpoint in this whole class, so it doesn't really matter whether I put the route on the class or I put the route on the method. And there's no way for me to build a route. Like if I wanted to have a base author endpoint and have the slash authors thing in it, there's no easy way for me to do that here as it stands. So that's the issue, that's the challenge. And so some ways that I address this is if I have a request type, I'll often put the route on the request. And so here, this route would come from the delete author request instead of just being a string here in the route or on the endpoint, which is not the same thing as inheriting route conventions from a base class by any stretch, but it does make it a little bit easier because at least they're all in the request. And when you want to go write a test that's going to hit this endpoint, you can use the same request in your test that you would use in your production code. And so now if it changes for your test too. So at least you get that reuse there. Other things you could do is probably you could have, I was thinking maybe you could have like an author endpoint, like public, abstract, class, base, async, author, endpoint, like this, right? And then spell it right. And then here you'd want to be able to say what the base route was, route, slash authors, let's say. But there's no way to inject this into this chain, right? Because as soon as I say that this thing inherits from base async endpoint, well, base async endpoint isn't a thing, right? It's just this static container class. It doesn't inherit from anything. I'm not even sure if you can inherit from a static class, this one. So I don't know that you can inherit from base async endpoint. I'm pretty sure you can't because it's static. You certainly couldn't put a route on it because it's not going to be a controller. The thing that's a controller is here, right? This one is the controller because base endpoint async is this guy right there, which inherits from controller base. So the innermost classes here have the dependency, and you need to sit right in front of that to do it. So you'd almost have to build your own base author async endpoint Fluent class to inherit from. You have to have this whole structure yourself, which doesn't sound like it's worth your time to do it. So then the question is, okay, can I code gen that? Can I make that easier without you having to copy paste all this code and change it and add, essentially every one of these would have to have this route on it that would say, hey, go to authors, right? And that would be the only thing that would be different, right? Everything else would be the same except for that. So, and then maybe the name would be like base author async endpoint. That seems like a lot of wasted, reused plumbing code. so not reused, repeated. So I don't really like that. Anybody have any ideas from the peanut gallery? How can we do shared base routes on these endpoints here? Yeah, while I'm in here, I'm going to try and change up these requests to do the route thing that I was talking about. So we'll take that /authors from there, and we'll put it on the create command, just so people kind of see what this looks like. What if I could put it on a base command? Nah, it's probably more effort than I need. So this could just be a public const or a public static read-only route equals that. Does that work? I guess I should give it a type. Okay, and then that should allow me to go in here and say that this is actually the create author command dot route. And then you don't like that. Why? It must be a constant. Oh, fine. Then we'll make it a constant. Now it's happy. Alright, so now if I go look at my test for create endpoint, where right now it's hard coding this thing, this too can be the actual route thing. So this is create author. I don't need the $sign anymore. Create author command dot route, and that should still work. So if we just run this test, we'll verify that works. Thanks for the follow, Calvless, but no one has any ideas on this route thing, huh? Alright, well, let's see. We can put the route there, and we could build some type of, constant-based thing for this that would, structure them together. But it can't really have any logic in it if it's a constant. So even that's hard to try and build anything with a default base route. I think just moving to the constants is the way to go. So on this request, we'll just take the same constant string here. Look at delete. It's the same with a whack ID on it. So go here, give you a route, authors /ID, and then delete author request dot route. I think I missed some other tests though. Let's go back to this create endpoint, because I got that one, but I think I missed this one here. I'll bet is, yeah, that one's duplicated. Okay, so that should be good. Let's run this test. And everything's still green. Alright. So on the delete, they're a little trickier. Because now I've got to do a replacement of the route with this number 2 value. And that number 2, I don't know why I'm using number 2. It's not a very useful thing. It's just an existing author. So I guess we'll say int existing author ID equals 2. And then this will be existing author ID. Assert true. And then that 2 is a different thing. That's not an ID. That's just the total. Which I guess is based on how many authors I have in my seed data. But this now needs to be different. This needs to be delete author request dot route dot replace ID with existing author ID. And that's replacing all of that, right? Is it not going to let me replace a const? Can't convert from string to char. Can you use a pattern ID in the constant? I did. It's in there. Do you think I should do a string format on it or what? Like here's the that's in the constant. But how do I take that without doing a string replace? How do I replace that? I can do a string format, but a string format's expecting a 0, not an ID, in there. So usually I just do a simple string replace for this, and for whatever reason, let's just do this. String route equals string dot replace. Let's just grab that whole thing, put it right here, so we can see it all in one line, and that's my route. Alright, so when I try and do this, it says I can't convert string to char, and it says can't convert into char, and I don't want to be a char. I want to be string dot replace with a string. So maybe this needs to just be a .toString, which I'll bet is all it needs. And now it knows it's a string to a string, and it's happy. And if we do that route again, both of these again, for this one, then pass it this route. That should do the same thing. Long-running delete request when token source calls for cancellation request is terminated. Alright, so let's run this. And it's all good. Let's run everything. String format with parameters. Can you do a string format with an ID in it? I thought it had to be a 0, 1, 2. I don't know. I've been using string interpolation forever. Let me just see what you're trying to say. So there's my route. I'm doing a replace, but if instead I said string x equals delete auth request dot route, but actually string dot format delete auth request dot route, comma. Now how do I give it an arg that is the ID? Right? That's what I don't know how to do. Like I can pass it in existing author ID, but that doesn't work, does it? Let's see what that does. I expect that's going to blow up. But if not, maybe I learned something. Well, it's not fast. Alright, there we go. Thing failed. It failed because why? Why'd you fail? You didn't even hit my breakpoint. Tell me what's wrong. Test failed. There we go. Input string was not in the correct form. Yeah, because it doesn't have a 0 in it. So, yeah, I don't know how to do a string format on arbitrary tokens. I don't think I can use this with string.format out of the box. That's cool. You would think that you could, right? Because that works as soon as you do this, it works fine, right? But string format's old, and it only wants to work if this was a 0, then it'll work. But not with a named parameter. It ought to, and there's probably some library I could use that does it, but this isn't it. So we'll get rid of that. And then everything should be good. I don't know why this is all green. You're going to tell me I can remove async from this, I think. No. Tell me why you're all green. Async operation method does not need to use async await. Alright, if you say so. Let's try it without it. Okay, now you're not green at least. And let's run all the tests again. Alright, so at least that's all good, and that's probably enough for now. I can always work on that later, so let's see, we refactor to use a route variable from a request object in endpoints and tests. How about that? Commit that, and sure, let's push it right to main. It should be fine. What could go wrong? We really only touched the sample, so that should be fine. Alright, so then if we come back here and we go back to GitHub, I don't have a good way to fix this. So this person was saying store your routes as constants in a static class somewhere and then reuse them and do that. That's similar to what I'm doing. Potential workaround. So I'll just mention what I just did. So we'll go back to here. We'll talk about this. We'll say what I typically do is similar, but I put the specific route constant on the request that goes with that endpoint, like this. This is in the latest sample in the repo. Route. So I do need to go find, actually let's go ahead and close this. I need to find where I said that you should do that, because somewhere I'm saying that. So let's see, this is closed. In my docs, I said something about route in the Readme and create an endpoint class, okay. Right. From route, okay, how can I bind parameters from multiple locations? Okay, that's fine. If you want to create a common route template for all, simply create a base endpoint of your own that inherits from my base endpoint and add a route attribute to it. That no longer works. So that I need to edit. So that was under 5 open questions. I wonder, is there a strike through I can do on that? Because I want to show it. I used to say, you used to be able to do this. GitHub docs, strike through text. Tilde tilde. Alright, I've never used that before. Tilde tilde. That's not it. Tilde tilde. Ooh, look at that. Tilde tilde. Yeah, there you go. A095. After refactoring to use the Fluent Generics pattern, there is no longer a way to use a base class for a default route. Instead, you should define your routes as constants, which you can store in a central file or in each request DTO. Alright, let's say that. That's good enough. And we closed an issue. Alright, now the other issue I wanted to look at was how to do file uploads, which is this one. So we need a custom response for file download endpoints. And if I remember correctly, this issue has some code, maybe? Yeah, like this. Okay. This says without response. and then it returns a file, which is an action result. And what we had up here was basically the same thing. This one was an action result of file result, and that didn't work. And so the question was, adding a custom return type for file types. Public abstract with response custom. Handle async. Or it's just a simple task, I guess. So the only difference between that and what we have now is that I have a task of tResponse. Right, so we need a file, one of these types. Yeah, right, so I can't map an action result of T into a file result is the problem. So this person ran into a similar one, wants to return a file content result, which is an action result, but not an action result of T. So I need a non-generic action result somehow to be able to be returned, which means my Fluent generic is going to get even more fluenter, because instead of just having without response, or does this work out of the box? I wonder if I can show a file download. So in my sample, I could try and add a file download and download something and see if this works. So let me pull this down here. And let's do an author endpoint of, I don't know, something like, we got a list already. What if we do a list CSV format or something? Copy this, and we'll say list CSV, let's say. Okay, so list CSV will not do that, will provides a list of authors in a CSV file format, right? And it's going to take a base async endpoint with some requests, which I don't think it needs a request. Let's do without request, because I don't think I've got a demo that shows that. So dot without request and dot with response, but I think what we just said is it doesn't need to have an actual response for this to work. It needs to be the non-generic action result. So it really should be without response. To do maybe have a custom file response. We'll see. We'll see if we have to do that. Okay, so list CSV, authors, CSV, I guess, and list all authors as a CSV file. Alright, so action result is all we're returning. It is still async, so it's going to be a task of action result. And it's not going to have an authored list request. We'll still have a cancellation token. We're not going to look at paging, because that's not really a thing with a CSV. So our result is going to be, go get us a repository request, list all async with none of these things. I think I have one that just takes a cancellation, like that. Yep. Okay. We're going to map it to an author list result. I don't think I need that. Let's just get this result as a list for now. So result equals that dot to list. Alright, so I got some authors. Now in this other code, it's just going to go get a file name off disk. I want to create a file and return it and maybe do this produces thing. Let's see, what is the content type content type for CSV file. It's going to be text CSV. Response to content type CSV is application CSV. Alright. And maybe add a header. Alright. Lots of different ways to do it. ASP to MVC, you can say file content result in the file method. So I could change to a file content result, which a file is. I can just say return file with the data and give it a name. So that's basically what I want right there. I want to be able to get the data some way, but we want to do this. Get CSV data from that result. And this can just be another method right here for now. Alright, so given a bunch of authors, how do I create that into a CSV? So, but then this file should work. File name.csv. Alright, so right now I could test this and probably get an empty CSV file. But let's lean on Stack Overflow and say C# convert list of entities into CSV. And someone's going to show me how to do this without me having to do any work. And it's going to look a lot like that, maybe. I'm going to do service stack as a toCSV. That might work. This person wants to do it fast, which I don't really care about fast. CSV serializer, packages. I don't want to install a package. File helpers library, link to CSV package. I like to convert to CSV. I think this is pretty much what I want. Josh Close, CSV helper. See, I don't really want to have to put another package dependency on this sample, right? Because it's part of the repo that I'm using for the NuGet package, and you shouldn't have to have a dependency on a CSV helper to use the NuGet package, which I'm sure I can exclude it, but I'm okay for this thing to be just stupid. But let's look at your thing there. Let's open that. Can I steal their code? I want to write some CSV data, so no, write a class. So there's my record list. I can get a stream writer. Then I can write a CSV to it. Okay. That's pretty easy. But I don't actually want to write to a file. But I could write it to a byte array and that would be fine. And yeah. Prereqs. Using reading array file. I want to stream. Stream reader. That's to read from. Stream open write. I don't want to write to a file. Alright. But you're not showing me your actual code, which I'm guessing is in your GitHub repo somewhere. And it's probably more than I want to do. CSV here, CSV helper here, CSV converter, writer, CSV writer. This is a much more complicated task than I had envisioned. Writing a, yeah, but I don't want to write a file. Yeah, maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I just want to return a text file. Maybe it doesn't need to be a CSV. How about that? Let's just make it a text file. In fact, it could even be a JSON file because I already have JSON. Maybe that would be smarter. Let's just change the rules here. Suddenly it's a JSON file format. But it's going to be a file, right? So let's just do that. List JSON, list JSON. Let's even give it the word file in the name. JSON file. How about that? Okay. Now we should probably rename this. Sorry, Vertigo. I appreciate the help, but I just don't want to have to pull in a library for this stupid demo. So there's that, and then this becomes JSON, and this becomes JSON, all the things. Now your text, JSON, and your file name, JSON, and your file name could be better, like say authors.json, and then I don't need this, I just need to serialize my list, right? And I have system text JSON. I do need to get it as a byte output. So system.text.json.serializer dot serialize. Can I serialize it to a byte array? Yes, serialize to that what? My input, right? Input object value input is result, maybe. Right, so var stream data equals that, and we can pull that off and bring in that. For each on the author, add the param values to a comment of a string is what I've seen. Yeah, and I could do that. I mean, my author model is trivial, right? It's that. So, it'd be easy for me to do the CSV thing. But I think just doing it as a JSON file should work. We'll see in a second. Because now I can do this, and I can do this, and I can do this, and we can test it. And it doesn't work. It blows up. And it says that these things that got copied when I copied the file are problematic. So I'll get rid of those. And now it is happy. So eventually we want to write a test that proves this works. But because I'm lazy / impatient, I'm going to try and just run it in Swagger and see what we get. So if we get authors JSON, that's not what I said. I said authors JSON. Here we go. Try it out. Do it. And it says, look at this. We got a file. And it's a gzipped text JSON file. Success, blah, blah, blah. We can download this file. We can open up this file. And it should look like JSON. It does. So that worked. That was easy. All right. I like that. All right. So what does that do for me? Well, that says that this thing here works, right? And so all I have to do is say use without response and return a file, and you're good. So I've added a sample. I haven't actually added a sample yet. Let me push some things. All right, so we're going to go over here, and we're going to say add file response example to sample app, and we'll push that. And we'll pull and push because I updated the Readme. And we're good. And now I can go over here and we can go open up the code in another tab and go find that sample, endpoint app, author endpoints, list JSON file, there. And it's just a task of action result, but it returns a file. And I need to get rid of a space, apparently. So we added a sample that shows how to download a file using API endpoints and the generic Fluent Generic base classes. It's here. There you go. Basically, you just need to use without response and then return file. Close. Okay, now let's go add to my docs to do the same thing. So in here, go back to our package, readme. Somewhere in here it has those open questions, number 5. One of those open questions. Oh wait, I got all these things here. Add common endpoint groupings. No, that's not it. That example. What was the name of this section? Getting started. This isn't really getting started. Let's put it down under open questions where I was going to do it. So add. All right. triple tick and then the question. So triple thing goes like this. How can I return a file result from an API endpoint? Here's an example in the sample app. It shows how to set this up and return a file action result. For the base type, just use the without response option, and in the endpoint handler, return file. Like that. Beef Coder, thank you for the follow. I think that should be good enough. So we'll commit that and call that done. We'll go back to our issue list. So let's see. Is it possible to bind this and that, this from last year? I think we covered this. We got this one working. So what is still not working here? Blue comment will help applicable. Let's do it now. Meteor did this and it should work. So you have your request type, and it has both from query and from body. And I thought we had this all working and documented. This is where we did the no, this is not Fluent Generics, is it? Maybe it is. With request, with response to that. Yeah, this is getting the Fluent Generics, but this one's changing it to have 3 different requests. How would you have 3 different requests? That doesn't make any sense to me. This one's like have 2 requests, have 3 requests. This is just trying to add parameters to the handle method, I think. And the trick is not to put the things on the handle method. The trick is to put it into its separate request, like this request. And then in that request, you can put from route, from query, from whatever. So remember this. Well, that's the case sensitivity note. All right. So Gary Woodfine's approach works. Yeah, so I had the same issue, but further realized model binding actually takes care of this. All you have to do is create your own model class and decorate your properties. Right, exactly. So that's all fine. This one is doing that, and they said that, and they said that, and I've closed the PR50. All right, show how to do that, and I did that, and then in March, this confuses Swashbuckle and it causes problems. And someone else saw this 8 days ago, same problem. And so the issue is that yes, you can do whatever that Matt here said to do with this route with a forecast request that says from route, and he's trying to get the day from here. And so in day he says get this from the route, but the model he says get from the body. And here's the model. And they're saying, okay, but forecast says that you've got a day as a string and a forecast with a summary instead of what you want to have. So we want to have expects a request body in the form of forecast model. Swagger is going to say that it's expecting the day from the body, even though it shouldn't be. Alright. So do I have a repro of that in my sample? And if not, can I add one and show that that works or doesn't work? So let's see. I don't think I have something that has something that comes off the route and off the body. Things the body is used for create. What about update? So update does the tests. Here's the actual endpoint. So on the update endpoint, we don't put anything on the route. We just do an update to authors, and then we pass in the author update command, which is right there, and it doesn't have any routing on it. Alright, so what would be an example of something where I would post something and put stuff on the route? Like usually I don't like to do that. That's not a scenario I usually like. And apparently Swagger doesn't like it either because it doesn't handle it right. So from route you pass the day, from body you pass the forecast. Why wouldn't you just pass the day in there too? That would make more sense. Folks on the stream, what do you think? Would you do this? Would you have a route variable for something you were posting to, and then inside your request have the thing be in a body? Or would you just have the route be just a static route and put everything you need in the request? I would put everything in the request every time. So I think I'm going to just document this as, go look at this issue, essentially, and then I'll close it. Because I don't think I want to show a sample of how to do this, in a bad way. Let's see what this says. Alright, so did I include this? Right, this is a request. Possible to bind both from query and body using this. Yeah, okay, that's what we just looked at. Right. GraphQL, there you go. Definitely do the latter. This isn't GraphQL, okay. Not an expert here, but REST API with put would be both ID and URL and probably in body. You do see that a lot, Knickers PL, but it's actually something I cite as an anti-pattern in my API best practices talk that I give. I'm giving it on Tuesday at Dev Intersection, for instance. But the problem with that is that what do you do when they're not the same or one's missing or whatever? Like I'm not a fan of that pattern, which is why I'm not using it in here, by the way. So if you do, as a quick tangent, let's go show what that looks like. If you do an update and you say update authors / whatever ID, right? And then in the update request or command, this update author command, right, you have an ID here. What do you do when they're not the same? Which one wins? So in your actual action method here, you can get request.id. That's going to be that's coming off of this. But you could also, if you wanted to, you could go fetch this one off of the route, and you could fetch the other one off of the post or put, in this case, off the body. And if this one says 2 and this one says 3, then which one do you update? Like, you shouldn't do either one, right? You should just blow up and say, hey, invalid request. You gave me mixed signals. You told me 2 different things. That's the definition of a bad request. But why even allow that to possibly happen, right? What is the value of putting it here if it's going to be in the command anyway? So I just don't put it there, and then you don't have that problem, right? You'll never have that issue. So anyway, back to here on this, I think I'm just going to say specify your route parameters on the model. Alright, so the URL is the ID of the resource, and the ID in the body is the new value. So if that's forbidden, then return some error, but I get it, I always have the same problem. Well, it's very rare that you would have a system where you are allowed to change the IDs of things. That's usually not done. But so I could see that if that was what you're doing, right? If the URL had the resource ID and the body had the new ID, then sure, right? That would make sense. But that's usually not the case. Usually they're both just specifying if you want to talk about it like it was SQL, and you were saying update author set name equals Steve, where ID equals 2, that ID is usually only being applied to the where statement, not the set statement. It's not setting the ID, typically. Alright, so have the ID in the URL, put fields only in the command without the ID. That's fine too, JSteph, as long as you're consistent. Just don't put it in both places, right? That's all I'm saying. If you want it in the URL, it's totally fine. Just pick one, right? Don't pick both. Alright, so let's just document this. This is an open issue that says all these things and has this last bit here about this. The last thing I said was, hey, does this work? And I got multiple people thumbs upping it that it works. And as far as I know, it should work fine. So if I just document and link here, I think we're good. And so what am I documenting? I'm documenting that we want to be able to have something come in from the route or the query string and the body, and be able to get all those things. So we'll go in here. As a former DBA, change a primary key, you need to delete a row and then insert a new record. Yeah, it violates the rule that the PK is never changed. Right. And you could totally do that with an API where you do a delete and then a post, and that would be fine. So you shouldn't do that with a put or an update, for sure. I think we all agree. Until somebody else jumps in and wants to have a different opinion. But for now, I think we all agree. All right, so creation of file, that's great. Here's my next question. How can I use model binding to pull values from multiple places, like from route, from body, etc.? The base endpoints only expose a single model type, which is used on the, what's that called, on the handle method. So you can't necessarily, easily add additional parameters to the handle method. However, you can put as many properties on the associated request DTO as you want, and model binding allows you to set the same attributes per property as you would have set per parameter on the action method. Let's see model binding docs and discussion here in issue whatever 42 maybe, I don't know, 42. Hey, doink doink. John Autumn, but ID used in the URI does not have to be a primary key. That is true. That is true. It does not. Which is fine, and maybe it's changeable, right? But if the ID in the route or in the API corresponds to a unique numeric value that you can use to look up the thing, like, isn't that the definition of a primary key? Let's say that you wanted to be able to update an ID that's like, you know, your username. Like, I'm on Twitter and I don't know what my user ID is as a number. I don't even know if I have one, but my alias, my profile name is Ardalis. And so I might be able to do a put that says put profile name equals Ardalis, and then in the body say I want it to be named Steve, right? And it should update my formerly unique key of Ardalis, well, hopefully it'll still be unique, to a new unique value Steve, right? Which surely that would be available on Twitter right now, yeah? But yeah, that would be fine, right? Because those have different meanings, right? One is, this is the thing that I want you to use to look up the record that I'm changing, and the other one is, this is the new value that I'm specifying. It's the only time it's a problem is when it's both of those things are being used in the same way. They're both being used to find the record to update, not as a value to update. All right, where is the ASP.NET Core model binding docs? That's going to be model binding ASP.NET Core right there, and it looks like that. We'll put that in my Readme file as a link, and people can find it. And is there a way to do? Yeah, let's see. Right, you can apply model binding. Tries to find values on those things. Can be applied to a public property of a controller or a model class to cause model binding. Yeah, so I think I'm all correct. I think we're good. So Commit that, and we can close issue 42 as done. So you're out of here. I documented this in the Readme. Close. All right. What's next? Let's get through some more of these issues. I got some time left. Swagger fetch error and optional parameters via query string. All right. If you have an endpoint that takes in a route parameter, but you want to accept optional query string parameters, how do you declare your base async endpoint? So I have a public get async endpoint, this, that, and then I have a query object name and all versions. But when I hit Swagger, it shows this weird stuff here. Now, is new to creating APIs. Is the optional values on the query string a bad practice? No, not really. I have an HTTP GET calc engines route returns all information. The Swagger issue, though, is I can't seem to find any logging saying why it's failing. When I had only one endpoint, everything was fine, but when I added two endpoints, I got undefined error. So he's got some kind of duplicate route that Swagger didn't like. The following shows my endpoint code. Both essentially the same. I decided if I'm keeping media or not, but if... Okay, so he's got base async endpoint. This is old code, so it's before I had the Fluent Generics. This is the request is that, and the response is that array of calc engines. The request is a query, and he passes in a name, and then his query has his things here, but he did not mark these as from query. He did mark this as from query, but then where's the name go? So the name is not from query, but he marked the whole thing. So yeah, so this is his problem, is if name needs to be from route, then this right here needs to say from route, I think is the issue. So let's see what he says. Hey, look, he figured it out. From route. All right, discover the cause, blah, blah, blah. Solution. Okay, so do from route, do from query. Use attributes and parameters of the handle. Okay. This looks good. All right. Closing. This looks like it's solved. Should have probably closed it a while ago, so I wouldn't have to reread it all today. But, you know, that's how it goes. All right, what else we got? How to use created at, verify and fix code analyzers. I don't know how to do that right now. Somebody else did that. That was a community person. Consolidate my pipelines. I'm not going to mess with that today. So let's look at this one. So Terry says, none of the created at star methods, nor the link generator, are able to create URLs under this pattern. Are there any workarounds? So what is created at? I don't use that. I don't see a created at here. I see... Where is it? Oh, that. Created at action. Okay. Alright, so you want to use... You wouldn't return a 304 not modified on a created at. And I don't think you'd use a 200 OK either. Created at is its own response code, right? Alright, so can you show the source of download file? Sorry, I tried to explain it wrong. I have it working now. Oh, that's good. But I can't even decipher it. It must have been a long night. Following created at route works inside download file async. So return, if I have some object, I can return created at route, name of route.files, name of route files get. Alright. New ID, new, just decorate my get method as HTTP get that name equals that. Okay, well, it seems like it's working, so I'm going to say this is done also. And done. Alright, so that's all the things. I didn't really do anything that requires an update to the package. We just added docs and samples, I think. So I don't need to do any kind of deployment on this. So we'll say this one's done for now. Let's go back and find another repo. Guard clauses. Guard clauses had a PR I think I wanted to look at. So null or empty was not respecting null inputs. It was being disrespectful. So Taylor C a few days ago wrote in that all the things that were null didn't throw an argument null exception. In fact, they just threw an argument exception. And that's been by design since forever for this thing, because for strings, when it does a null or empty, it doesn't tell you if it was null or if it was empty. It just throws whatever exception that throws, which I think is an argument exception. And let's verify those work. Let's look at his code. So basically, in the string ones, where it was returning an argument exception, now he's doing a null check first. Or maybe this is the old code. The old code was doing a null check, and then it was saying if it was empty, do this other thing. And now you're saying if input is null, throw a new argument null exception, and then say if null or empty, which at this point we know it's not null, that's because we would have thrown. Now throw this other argument exception. The question is, why didn't the guard against null already do that? Why do I need that? If the input is null, do that to say it was empty, which, I mean, it's not, it's null. I think I need to talk about this. So you basically want to change that. Beefcoder, give me the problem I'm facing right now. Every user on my website can update their settings, which are made up of different foreign tables. I came up with 3 solutions. First, delete all the user settings and add new ones. Second, update all the user settings. Or third, only update the changed settings. Which one would be best? The hardest thing about this is that submitting one form is supposed to update, add, or delete some data from different tables. Yeah, we can talk about that. So let's just throw Notepad up here and think about this for a second. All right, so let's say I have 3 settings, right? And I'll just make up some stuff. So I've got string favorite color, and I've got string favorite band, and I've got string theme, right? Let's say, and I want to be able to change this. So option 1 is when I hit, all right, well, let's say I have a form with all 3 text boxes and 1 save button. What happens when I click save? Option 1 is delete star from user settings where user ID equals me, and then insert, basically for each var setting in settings, insert setting. Okay, so that's option 1. Option 2 is update all user settings. So this becomes for each var setting in settings, update setting. All right. And option 3 is figure out which ones actually changed and just update those. Okay, so any of those will work, Beefcoder. The only thing you have to worry about is sort of edge cases and extra behavior. So the first question is, so some questions. One is, does performance matter? Because if you have, and how many settings are there? And how big is this table? Okay, because if you have a whole lot of settings, then deleting them and re-adding them could be expensive. So delete all, add all could be expensive, could lock the table for concurrent requests, etc. Right? So it's less efficient, although it's probably one of the easiest ones. Question 2, it's how hard is it to detect changes? If it's easy, do option 3. It's the most efficient. So if you're using EF or another ORM, you can just load the current settings update each one if it's not the same as it currently is, and then call db.savechanges. And EF is smart enough to know if you changed any of them, right? So it will only update the rows that you changed. So there might be, instead of 3 settings, you might have 300 settings. And when you load all that into EF and you change just these 3 ones, and you tell it now update, it'll just issue the 3 update statements, or it'll issue 1 update statement and just have 3 sets on it. So it's smart enough to do that. So probably I would do that, right? Most of the time, just figure out which ones changed and update them, and let someone else deal with whether or not they changed. Now, how can you check if they've changed? If you wanted to mark them somehow yourself, well, that's pretty easy. You would just have a method for each one, and so you might have, detect changes, or better yet, only update if changed would be something like void update favorite color string new color, and the first thing you do is you say, if new color equals this dot favorite color, then don't do anything, just return. Otherwise, favorite color equals new color, and importantly here, raise any events, if any, as needed. So the other thing that you need to think about when you're doing this is this pure CRUD data? Like, is that all we're doing is changing data in a database? Or is there behavior that needs to happen when this occurs? When I change the user settings, do I need to notify anybody? Do I need to put that in a log file? Do I need to update the UI somewhere and say, hey, the settings changed, reload all the things, because now their theme should look different, or whatever, right? And so if I want to do behavior based on which ones of these changed, maybe when theme changes, I need to do something, right? When their favorite color changes, I don't really care, right? But if they change their theme from a dark theme to a light theme, well, now I got to repaint the UI. That's a different thing. And so if you have that, then you absolutely don't want to do this. You don't want to delete everything and re-add everything if it means that all these changes fire off and say everything changed, do all this extra work, when really only one setting changed, and maybe it was one that nobody cares about. So definitely option 3 is the better approach across the board, I think. And if you need to control whether or not behavior occurs, make sure you detect when nothing has actually changed, and only make the change if something did in fact change. So hopefully that helps. 5-minute view. Alright, so back to this. I'm really not sure this is doing anything I need to change. So I think I'm just going to ask him what he's trying to change here, because I thought that would do what it needed to do. So, doesn't the current behavior, which relies on gar.against.null, already throw a null reference exception in the case of null and an argument exception otherwise? Is that what you're trying to change? I think if it's null, then the null reference exception is the appropriate exception to throw. Also, this would break lots of tests that are expecting the current behavior. If it's SQL database, then store procedures with merge statement can help, as a suggestion from Prasad Kumar. I have not used the merge statement. How does that work? Try to keep the database related code in C# and let the ORM do the work. Yeah, that's generally my approach as well. But what does merge look like? SQL merge statement, stored procedure. Can you do an upsert with that? Is that what it's designed for? SQL Server merge. Solution. Well, this is brand new. It's no wonder I've never heard of it. It's from 2008. You can use the merge command to perform all these things in one statement. That's probably never confusing. Okay, so merge this table using this other table on something, match this When it's not matched, otherwise do that. Okay, show me a real example. So I create some products, and I insert some records, and then I create updated products, and I update some things. And specifically, I update coffee to be 25, muffin to be 35, pizza to be 60. But pizza is now a 5, and biscuit is missing. So, okay. So now I want to do the merge. I want to do the merge. It's this really complicated thing. Okay. Yeah. I don't think I'm going to be writing that anytime soon. That's a lot of complexity in my database code that I don't need to deal with. I'll just write simple SQL statements I can follow, and this also is going to require like temp tables and stuff. If I'm trying to do it in a single request from a web app, I'm not going to have an actual updated table, so I'll probably create a temp table to do it. Let's see. Prasad says yes, we can check if it's matched based on condition insert or update. Sure. So if it's matched, then what? Then update. There we go. And when it's not matched, then insert. And if it's just missing, then delete it. Right? When not matched by source, then delete it. Okay. I can see how this would be useful, but I'm not going to write that code, I don't think, anytime soon. I'll just let my higher level code use a library to do that. But that's cool. I didn't know that existed. Alright, so I'm not going to necessarily merge this one. I have a question. And hey, let's do some of these. Keep on top of my dependabots. No, I don't want any conflicts. It's going to resolve them for me. You wait for it. Come on. Come on, dependabot. Ah, really? You get one more try, one more chance. Aha, there it goes. Just have to be patient. Alright. Now I can squash and merge. Cool. It's fast, but it's not quite fast enough. Alright, and Z Slack Cow has given me a consolidated pipeline in this one too. So at some point I gotta really look into that and see if I want to do that. But otherwise, let's see. That's that's done. I think we're good here. So the last one I think I'll look at is specification. So I think there's been a few things added to that. If you're interested in my C# Generics course that's coming out theoretically today, that's why I had this open. I think it'll be tonight. It's usually at like 10 o'clock Eastern time. So later on today, theoretically, my C# course will be released, and if you want the samples for that, you can check it out here, the C# Generics repo, which was private, but I just made it public yesterday. So go look at that. All right, let's look at Smart Enum first, see if it's got, ooh, wow. I haven't been keeping up with this one apparently. Okay, well let's work on this for a minute. Hey, keep an eye on Pluralsight. Surly Dev, how's it going? You're triggering my bot to link to things. It's good. Yeah, do it. Alright, I guess I need to dedicate a future stream to Smart Enum, because it's apparently got a lot of stuff piling up here. 29 issues. When did that happen? That's crazy. Add dependabot. I did that. That's why I've got all these things. So that one I can close. Let's see. See if we can keep up with these dependabot things faster than they come in. Squash and merge. Delete. Pull requests down to 11. Newtonsoft. Update the branch. Squash. That's what I just said. Is it going to keep going down, or is it going to start throwing new ones at me? Protobuf gets a full point release, point release, point release. I don't like just randomly accepting point releases. I'll just do minors. Continuous, okay, he's giving me that same thing there and there. Upgrade to GitHub native. Oh yeah, I think I was going to do this. Dependabot preview, blah 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 blah. Sure, let's use the native GitHub Dependabot. And we'll see what that changes. That's going to be where I'm going to get a bunch more things. Benchmark, that won't break anything. I can pull that in. So merge. Merge. Alright, now I think we're good. Those two I'll look at later. These are all big ones that I want to test before I accept. So then we just have to think, do I want to look at this thing from 2019? At some point I have to close this thing or do something with it. Let's just read through it. So I configure a lot of properties with EF core. If you want to use smart enum, you have to deal exactly with these problems every time you're using an enum as an entity or in an entity. So we can eliminate that hassle. Find a convenient way to configure all your smart enums with one line of code. It adds a new project, smart enum EF core. Okay. And then you just say configure smart enum on model builder. Alright, that sounds great. Cool. And Yarg thought it was cool 2 years ago. And you should update the Readme. Alright, well, where is this thing? Update the Readme. Okay, this looks great, except I changed before. Can we put SQLite? Okay, that was easy. If time, someone else. Sorry, I'm busy. Got stuck. Alright, so no one has actually gotten this thing working. So that's why it's still hanging out here. So someone could please resolve conflicts and update this to use the current code, and we could merge it in. Otherwise, in a month or two, I will close this. He threatened. Okay. So there, at least it's got a comment from this year. Smart enum flag functionality. I don't think I've done that. But someone else has done it with this pull request. And smart flag enum. Create a separate class, minimize, change the original. There's some duplication, some info. Hoping to look at this soon, he said over a year ago, and then didn't. Lack of movement on his end. Well, I mean, not like I was jumping all over this. Smart flag enum is the benchmarks. This is brilliant, and it makes smart enum better. Why is -1 being hard-coded to represent all values? Okay, that's a good question. Normally C# flags use -1. Okay. Actually, I do want to try and give it a go. Let's see. This PR is not merged, so I'll have to work off your fork. How does that work? He doesn't know either because he's new to Git. Alright. Just wondering why you're using int throughout to parse values when it overflow when your underlying type is long. You'd have to have a lot of flags to have an underlying type of long, I guess, but okay. In theory, you're correct. You have to think you exceed maxing with the number of enumeration options. You're probably misusing enums, right? Now, you wouldn't necessarily have to have int.maxValue number of options, but you'd still have to have a lot, even if they're flags. Using int there to effectively have the possible enum options. It could maybe be changed without smart flag. Pepper over the engine. Can be track down and change. Yeah. So back in May, they've made some updates to pull in things. 104. What is 104? Feature requests. Support non-reflection based from value from name enums. This one's already closed? No, it's not. Alright, well, I'd like to take the time to review this. Can someone update the... and apologies for not getting to it before now. Someone update it to resolve conflicts and bring in the latest code. See if that happens. Yeah, so that's that. Still so many issues here. I'm gonna have to come back and probably spend a whole theme just on this, or a whole stream rather, just on this. But not today, because I wanted to look at specification before I run out of time. And specification has 10 issues, but no pull requests. And the most recent one from 3 days ago said, error, demo entity type name cannot be tracked because another instance of the same key is already being tracked. When attaching this, ensure only one is I'm able to get and add methods, no issue. When I try and update, it gives me this error. In a razor partial, I retrieve the entity by using this and updating the entity using that of the EF repository. I follow the link below. Please help me. Blah, blah, blah. Error goes away when I follow these steps. Get entity from database using ID. Use automapper to go to a DTO. Pass the DTO over to the other thing. Get the entity from database again. Update the properties from the DTO. And then save it. And then do that. And it sounds to me like the problem is that you don't have your DB context lifetime set up correctly. So it has to do with the change tracker of EF, says Fadi. Is Fadi here? Not today. Alright. There are two options. Fetch the entity from EF, do the corresponding changes and save them, or create a new object, fill in the things, blah blah blah. It's crucial that you don't fetch the entity from the database, because if you previously already had it tracked, then the entity with the same ID will cause you problems. Right, so this says do that, and that says do that, and it solves the error, and it's fixed it. Okay, so I can close this. So it looks like I can close this. One other comment I have based on your description of the problem is that perhaps you don't have your DB context lifetime configured as scoped, but perhaps as singleton, and that could cause the problem as well if you're working with the entity in two different parts of your application that are each constructed separately with their own instance of the DB context. Perhaps a singleton or transient, even. They both have their own share of problems. There. Okay, another one bites the dust. And what else we got? Consider covariance contravariant. I don't think that's really that useful, so I'm going to ditch this. Just something I was thinking of when I was doing my generics course. Thanks for the follow, HR Kings. Appreciate it. So now we're down to 8. Post-processing action on single. So we have a query.postprocessing action, and they want to work on single, not just output, but he says, never mind. I see the use case is something else. Maybe if the method was documented. Ha ha ha. Yeah. We accept pull requests for documentation, David. Are you here? What are the odds? Nope. Thanks to the frame, yeah, I added some hack the role handling for stone. Switch this. Okay, great. Meant overflow. Okay, right. Yes. So it would be nice if we had documentation for post-processing action. Need to use the getter and run it myself. I'm not using the repository. Yeah. Even so, post for a single record would be great, right? All right. So what did Ficeni say? Post was previously in memory. The ability to do some custom manipulation after you retrieve the objects from the data store. And there's details in this PR. Right? And stop highlighting. Open. There we go. Alright, so if you want to subscribe to domain events, that would be a good place to do it. Better if you're using .NET events or C# events as opposed to if you're on Mediator or whatever. Alright, so I want to at least link to this for the docs for the thing. So when I go back to here, I'm gonna say I'll make a note to update our docs to cover this better, and then we'll close it. And then I'm gonna actually just make the note in the docs. We're gonna go to code, we're gonna go to docs. We're gonna try and figure out where the heck to put this. I think it's a feature. Is it a base feature? No. That's the thing. Usage? No. Let's go view the docs. So the question is where to put it, right? And I've already forgotten what it was called. So instead of in memory, we decided to call it post-processing or something like that. And that you would think would be under either usage or under features. And it's not ORM specific, it would be a base feature. And the base feature has all these things. And it does not have the thing it needs to have. So the thing it needs to have is in specification. We do all these things, and then there's post-processing action, that. So that needs to be a core feature, right? So under base features, we're going to add it to that list. So docs, features, base features, edit. It just reads them from here. Alright, so I need to create a file, I think. Okay, so index. There, index has the list, maybe? Nope. Alright. Features, base features, index. Post-processing action is what it's called, which I keep forgetting. So I think that's the name of the file that I want to have. Post-processing action.md. So add a file, create a new file. Nope. That's not what I wanted to do. Cancel. I tried to paste. It was a bad idea. Docs, features, post-processing action. Create new file. Short-term memory is horrible. Post-processing action. Fine. Save that file. Alright, now let's go find another feature like paging. Paging has this stuff here that I care about. We're going to look at that. Where's the raw view? I guess we'll just take this, copy that, go back to features, go back to post-processing action, which I thought I was going to make a... How do I rename this thing? Here, I want it to be .md, and I want it to have all this. Title, post-processing action, nav order, I have no idea. Should be right after paging, so let's make it 6, but probably something else already was 6, so that'll be a problem. Post-processing action, example to do. And that's all that. And for now, we're going to say, see this issue for details. And this issue is this in-memory post manipulation, whatever, right? That goes here for this issue. And we'll say that's good enough. And then we'll go see nav order was 6. What's that going to do? When I go to my docs and look at the nav order, and is it going to build it already? Features, base features, it's not there yet. But paging and then caching is after paging, so I guess it wasn't alphabetical. Caching and select are the next one. So select is the last one. So if we go here and we look at caching, which is 6, and select, I said was last was 7, so I can make this thing be 8, and maybe it'll be alright. So nav order 8 should be better, and then we should go here and it should magically appear. Hey, look, there it is. Cool. See this issue for details. Good. Okay. Now, do I have it in the sample at all? So I have a sample app, and in here, and I don't know. There's a bunch of tests and other things in here. Where's our test? So do we have a test for post-processing action? No. Specs, entities. I always have the hardest time finding the actual tests in this for some reason. I think they're all here. So in here, I think, do we have post? No. So I don't think it's there. So we'll have to add some more demos for that. At some point I'm going to actually publish this EF6 package. I keep putting that off. And repository base improvements. What do we have to do with that? In April we talked about this and we said here's how it is. And we're changing the state right there, and EF can have problems with that, and we'd better to do that differently. And here we're doing that, and here we're doing that. I think what we have is working though. So I got to talk to Fadi about this sometime and see if it makes sense to make any of these changes. This is already really long. I'd rather that be a little smaller if we could. Okay, and I suggested some stuff here. Yeah, and we were talking about whether or not we want to have unit to work, which is just a whole other set of patterns to have in here. Yeah, so I'm leaning toward this is out of scope and they can do it themselves, because I don't need this to be the end-all be-all repository unit of work library. It's really just supposed to be specification. But I don't want to just shut down Ficini's project or pull request either, so we'll talk about it sometime. I guess it's an issue. Add build and publish tags for EF6. Evaluate specification for one entity. This one's... We have a single spec, don't we? So you can do a company spec, and you can do whatever validation if you need to. Right, we can do this today. The only trick is you have to pass the collection. And validation, so he suggests if you have two types, in our case, query and validation, maybe we can introduce a query spec and a validation spec. And a super spec that does all the things. This specification only for querying a set and has the rules defined for validating. And Ficini says these are valid approaches. but they can get tricky, yada yada yada. For March, we talked about this, we talked about that, and I think this is going to be another conversation with Viceni. Mention this issue, composite specification. Okay. Yeah, I don't really like composite specification. Alright, so I'm going to close this. We already talked about this. Resolved. Close that one. And we got about 5 minutes left till I'm going to say I'm done for today. So if anybody's got any last questions, comments, things that they're using these packages for, or things that they're wondering how to do stuff with GitHub, whatever you want, ask me anything. 5 minutes, go. Quick question from SurlyDev. We have a master branch that is our project working on Visual Studio 2010. That's a little old. Okay. We branched and upgraded to VS 2019. Good. That should just involve like project file changes. Your source code's all going to be the same. Is it an ASP.NET project? Okay, so you fixed some things on master. Now you want to be able to merge those over. Web forms, okay. So how do you pull your web forms things over into your other branch? Is that the question? How do you pull fixes that were made to one branch into another branch that's otherwise not the same? We just fixes over, but not merge everything, because we went through hell upgrading the projects, right? Yeah, so you want to cherry pick is the thing you want. I think. I'm not necessarily, I don't do this all the time, but I think you want to do a git cherry pick commit from another branch. I think that's what you want. So I got one commit brought over using a patch in Atlassian source tree, sure. It's definitely easier to do cherry pick if you've got a tool like source tree or GitKraken or something like that. But the thing you're looking for is cherry picking commits is what it's called. And so you go and you pick a commit that you want and you bring it over to the other branch. And so, you know, here's some Stack Overflow talks about it. But I think if you just know that this is the term to look for is git cherry pick. If you're not super comfortable using git from the command line, you can do that. Okay, so supposedly a senior dev did cherry picking, but brought over a bunch of other crap. That might be because your commits had a lot of crap in them, right? You can't cherry pick a file, you cherry pick a whole commit. And depending on how good you were at the time when you did those bug fixes of only doing the things you needed to fix that bug and not also doing a whole bunch of other work, that might be the problem, in which case you're kind of screwed. Your best bet is to go in and look at the actual code and manually copy and paste and pull out the bug fixes yourself and create new commits. So without looking at your commits, it's hard to say, yeah, so now your team lead is asking me to copy paste the same code, right, which is probably your only option if those commits are not clean. Like a lot of folks today, having used Git for a while, they're used to making lots of little commits, right? But if you, 10 years ago, if you were using another tool, you probably weren't using Git at the time, you're probably using Subversion or something else, or TFS, like it was a pain in the butt to commit code, and so you wouldn't do it all the time. And so you might commit like, here's everything I did today, or here's everything I did in the last 3 days, and you would have a whole big commit. So when you go to cherry pick, you're going to get all those changes from that change set, from that commit, all at once, right? You can't pick out just the little bits you want easily. Your tooling might give you a way to do that where you can pick and choose individual files that changed, but at that point it's probably faster to just redo the work, copy pasting the old code over. Right. Yeah. So you had 10 commits for like little things. Exactly. So like today with distributed version control, it's really easy to do lots of little commits. Once you get in the habit, it's easy. It's better. Um, Back in Visual Studio 2010 days or Web Forms days, that probably wasn't what your team was doing. So that's probably part of the issue. Prasad Kumar says, is it good to add a common library.NET framework to an API.NET Core and also WCF solution as a submodule? I think it depends a whole lot on what that library is doing, and whether you need it in both places and whether you're okay with coupling to it. So if you need it, and if it's doing good things, and if you're okay coupling to it, and if it works fine in .NET Core and WCF, then yes, it's fine to do that. And if the answer to any of those things was no, then you should probably not do that. So early dev's going to look at those original commits you tried to merge and read up on cherry picking. Cool. Yeah, if they're clean and all they have is that bug fix, then you should be able to use cherry pick. If they're a big mess, then copy pasting is probably easier. All right. We'll get closing things. And the last few times that I have done this Friday stream thing, there haven't been any live coders on. I'm opening up in another window. It's usually has the sound on. But there haven't been too many live coders doing C# stuff that I could send you over to. And I'd rather stick to, bringing you over to another C# developer than somebody playing Fortnite or doing other things. So there's people doing Python. There's an ad. There's another game dev. Yeah, so nobody's doing the type of stuff I'm doing. So I will just say goodbye when the time comes here in a minute. I don't see anybody. Nobody else wants to be online.
Label that. We're with wanted to make sure.
Shh. Hush. Yeah, I don't see anybody online that I would send you to. So, all right, last chance for any questions. And other than that, I'm going to go, and you guys can have a good weekend. So early dev, I tried doing the patch. I did try doing a cherry pick on the branch. It seemed to work. Probably comes down to how clean the commits are. Yeah, right. So that's next time you're having a conversation with someone about why they should do lots of small commits, you can remember back to this situation and say, here's why, right? Here's the pain that's caused by not doing small commits. You may not feel it today. You might feel it years from now, but it can be a problem. And on that note, commit early, commit often. Have a good weekend. Let me find my OBS window, and I'm going to say goodbye. Cheers.